Okay, I understand. Here is the English-US translation of the provided text, rewritten in a interpret and clarify style, with slight expansion where appropriate, and maintaining the original paragraph breaks and dialogue markers. On what felt like doomsday, my husband, Tmaine, blindsided me with divorce papers, accusing me of failing miserably as a wife and mother. He was even ruthless enough to demand all of our assets and sole custody of our daughter. But then, inside that tense courtroom, a moment of truth arrived in the form of a shocking declaration. It was the voice of my 7-year-old, Zariah, addressing the judge. "Your Honor, may I present something my mommy doesn't even know about?" The judge nodded, intrigued. My daughter bravely stepped forward, raised her tablet, and pressed play. As the video began, an absolute hush fell over the room as everyone watched, stunned. Before we get into the heart of this story, please let us know in the comments which state or city you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to help our channel grow, so we can bring you even more captivating stories. That fateful morning had started out deceptively ordinary. Nala, dressed plainly, had been up before dawn, tirelessly working in the kitchen. The subtle fragrance of a warm breakfast mingled with the clean scent of detergent emanating from the washing machine, which was humming away in the laundry nook. Nala moved with a quiet efficiency, barely making a sound. Over the years, she'd learned to navigate her own home like a shadow, deliberately trying not to disturb her husband, Tmaine. At precisely 6 a.m., Tmaine descended from the second floor. He was impeccably dressed and groomed. The moment he appeared, sporting a perfectly pressed shirt, Nala was already placing a mug of steaming black coffee and a hot breakfast plate on the table for him. Tmaine sat down and took the mug without even a glance in her direction. "The coffee's a little bitter today," Tmaine commented dryly, his gaze fixed on his phone screen. "I'm sorry, honey. I thought I measured it right this time," Nala replied softly. Tmaine didn't acknowledge her apology. He simply pushed the breakfast plate away, eating only a few spoonfuls in silence. Nala stood nearby, awkwardly awaiting any further instructions, but none came. The silence between them was so thick and cold that it seemed to freeze the steam rising from the coffee. Nala couldn't remember the last time they'd shared a joyful, laughter-filled breakfast. It was probably 2 or 3 years prior, around the time Tmaine started working late and taking increasingly frequent and lengthy business trips. "Is Zariah up yet?" Tmaine asked, without looking up. "Yes, honey, she's in the shower. She'll be down for breakfast soon," Nala replied. Sure enough, a moment later, the light patter of footsteps echoed down the stairs. Zariah, their bright-eyed 7-year-old daughter, ran toward them in her crisp private school uniform. Her smile was radiant, a striking contrast to the morning's somber atmosphere. "Good morning, Mommy and Daddy," Zariah chirped, kissing Nala on the cheek before heading towards Tmaine. He finally put his phone down and managed a slight, forced smile for his daughter. "Good morning, Princess. Finish your breakfast. Daddy's taking you to school today." "Wow, I'm going with Daddy," Zariah exclaimed with obvious delight. Nala quietly released a sigh of relief. At least in front of Zariah, Tmaine made an effort to appear affectionate. This brief breakfast was the only time they spent together as a family. As soon as Zariah finished eating, Tmaine stood abruptly, grabbed his briefcase, kissed Zariah on the forehead, and headed for the front door. As always, he walked past Nala as if she were invisible. No goodbye, no kiss, not even a fleeting glance. Only the roar of his expensive car pulling away was left, leaving Nala alone in the emptiness of their large house. Nala spent the rest of the morning immersed in her usual routine, clearing the table, washing dishes, doing laundry, and tidying up. She performed these tasks with mechanical efficiency, always striving to maintain a perfect home. She secretly hoped that if the house was clean enough, the food delicious enough, and she was quiet enough, maybe the old, loving Tmaine would return. But that Tmaine seemed to have disappeared long ago. At noon, Nala went to pick Zariah up from school. This was her favorite part of the day. She loved listening to Zariah excitedly talk about her friends, her art class, or whatever was in her lunchbox. "Mommy, I got 5 gold stars from my teacher today." "I answered the question right," Zariah chirped happily, holding her mother's hand tightly. "Wow, my daughter is so smart." Nala congratulated her sincerely, gently pinching her nose. As they arrived home and Nala was helping Zariah take off her shoes, she heard the unmistakable sound of a motorcycle pulling up outside. A uniformed courier called out her name. "Nyala, a package for you." Nala frowned, puzzled. She hadn't ordered anything. She went to the front door and accepted a large, thick brown envelope. There was no sender information, only a law firm's logo in the upper right corner. Nala's heart began to race with unease. "Who is it, Mommy?" asked Zariah, who had followed her. "I don't know, Princess. It's probably just junk mail. Go change your clothes, and then we'll have lunch," Nala said, trying to sound calm. After Zariah disappeared to her room, Nala sank onto the sofa in the living room. Her hands trembled slightly as she ripped open the envelope. Inside was a daunting stack of legal documents. The first sentence on the top page made Nala gasp for air. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Nala's world seemed to grind to a halt. Her ears were ringing. She reread the words, praying her eyes were deceiving her. Plaintiff, Tmaine. Defendant, Nyala. Reason for suit. The wife has totally failed in the fulfillment of her marital duties. Nala felt a wave of nausea. Failed? She had dedicated her entire life to this home. She had given up her promising career at Tmaine's insistence. She had devoted herself to raising Zariah. She made sure Tmaine's shirts were impeccably clean every morning. What did he possibly mean by failed? She forced herself to continue reading through the following sections. Her eyes blurred as she took in the cruel demands Tmaine was making. Tmaine was not only seeking a divorce, but also demanding full custody of Zariah, alleging that Nala was emotionally unstable and incapable of raising their child properly. And, most devastatingly, he was claiming all of their marital assets, including the house they lived in, arguing that Nala had not contributed financially and that all assets were solely the result of his efforts. Nala collapsed weakly onto the cold hardwood floor, the papers scattering around her. So, that explained Tmaine's coldness these past months. This had been a calculated plan, hatched in secret behind her back. The front door suddenly opened. Tmaine had returned from work unusually early. He stood in the doorway, looking at Nala slumped on the floor, and then at the scattered legal papers. His expression was cold and devoid of any remorse. "Honey, what does this mean?" Nala's voice trembled, tears welling up in her eyes. Tmaine calmly took off his shoes. He walked over to her, loosening his tie. He didn't deny anything or offer any explanation. He simply stated coldly, "It's exactly what you're reading. I don't want to live with you anymore, Nala. You've failed. You've failed as a wife and as a mother." "Failed?" Nala moaned in disbelief. "I've taken care of this house and raised Zariah." "Taken care of the house?" Tmaine scoffed with disdain. "The only thing you've done is spend my money. Zariah needs a better mother, a competent one, not someone who only knows how to cry and complain like you. But all the property, this house, and Zariah, honey, you can't take them from me. I've court." Nala began to sob hysterically. Tmaine crouched down, looking at her with a sharp, hateful look that Nala had never witnessed before. "I can, and I will. My lawyer has gathered all the evidence. You won't get anything, Nala. You'll leave this house without a single dollar." Tmaine stood up and smoothed his suit. He glanced towards the stairs, making sure Zariah couldn't overhear. "And get ready," Tmaine added, a chilling grin spreading across his face, freezing Nala's blood. "My lawyer says that even your own daughter will testify in court about how incompetent you are as a mother." Nala froze in terror, her heart shattering into a million pieces. Tmaine didn't just want a divorce. He wanted to completely destroy her. Nala didn't sleep a wink that night. After their cruel confrontation, Tmaine had retreated to the guest room and locked the door, as if Nala posed a threat. Nala spent the night in Zariah's room, sitting in the chair by the bed, watching her daughter's peaceful face as she slept. Her tears flowed ceaselessly. How could Tmaine say that Zariah would testify against her? Zariah was everything to her. What lies would they feed her innocent little girl? That thought tormented her more than any other accusation. The next morning, Tmaine acted as if nothing had happened. He woke Zariah up, helped her with her uniform, and took her to school. He didn't utter a single word to Nala. When Zariah asked why her mother's eyes were puffy, Tmaine answered with feigned indifference, "Mommy isn't feeling very well, princess." After they left, pure terror gripped Nala. She had to fight. She couldn't give up on Zariah so easily. She grabbed her phone and searched for the names of renowned divorce lawyers in the city. But a harsh reality quickly set in. Lawyers needed money, a retainer, a consultation fee. Nala realized she had absolutely no money of her own. Over all these years, Tmaine had only given her a monthly allowance, precisely budgeted for groceries and Zariah's school expenses. There was no room for any savings. Her only hope was their joint account, the one she had believed was their family emergency fund. With trembling hands, Nala opened the banking app on her phone. She entered her password, her heart pounding in her chest. When the balance appeared on the screen, Nala felt her legs give way. 0. The account balance was $0. It couldn't be. There should have been hundreds of thousands of dollars in there. Nala refreshed the app repeatedly, hoping it was a system error. But the number 0 stared back at her mockingly. She opened the transaction history, and her eyes widened in horror. Over the past 6 months, Tmaine had systematically withdrawn large amounts of money, transferring them to another account Nala didn't recognize. The last withdrawal had been made just 3 days prior, emptying the account completely. Tmaine had been meticulously planning this. He wasn't just leaving. He had deliberately crippled her financially, so she couldn't fight back. Nala cried out in despair. How was she going to hire a lawyer without a single dollar? She remembered her wedding jewelry. She rushed to her room and opened her jewelry box. It was empty. Only a few cheap imitation trinkets remained. Tmaine had even stolen her family heirlooms. In her desperation, Nala remembered an old friend who worked at a legal aid agency. She called her and explained the devastating situation. Her friend felt immense pity, but couldn't offer much assistance, other than to give her a name. "His name is Attorney Abernathy," her friend said. "He has a small office on the second floor of an old strip mall. He isn't an expensive lawyer, but he's honest and dedicated. Go see him. Explain your situation. Maybe he can help you." Nala had no other choice. With the small amount of cash she had left in her purse, she hailed a cab and went to the address her friend had provided. Attorney Abernathy's office was exactly as her friend had described: small, modest, and located on the second floor of an old building with peeling paint. Attorney Abernathy was a middle-aged black man with thick glasses and a calm, reassuring demeanor. He listened patiently to Nala's story without interruption, only nodding occasionally and taking notes. When Nala finished, Attorney Abernathy exhaled a long sigh. "Nala, this is going to be an uphill battle," he said in a low voice. "Your husband has planned all of this very thoroughly. He doesn't just want a divorce, he wants to destroy you. I know, attorney, but I don't care about the properties. I just want Zariah. Please help me. I don't have money now, but I will pay you. I will pay you in installments. I will do anything," Nala pleaded desperately. Attorney Abernathy looked at her intently for a moment. "Let's leave the money issue for later, Nala. What's important now is that we have to move fast. This lawsuit has already been filed. We have to prepare a response immediately." Attorney Abernathy asked Nala to wait. He left the room and returned a few minutes later with a folder full of photocopies. They were the lawsuit documents filed by Tmaine's lawyer. "Your husband's lawyer is Attorney Cromwell. He's known for being sharp and not hesitating to use dirty tactics," Attorney Abernathy said firmly. "Let's see what evidence they've presented." Nala nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Attorney Abernathy opened the folder. The first page contained photographs. Nala was shocked to see pictures of the interior of her house. Photos of dirty dishes piled up in the kitchen sink, pictures of the living room cluttered with toys, pictures of dirty clothes overflowing from the laundry basket. "But this is unfair," Nala protested. "These are photos he took when I was sick. I had a high fever for 3 days, and Tmaine didn't offer to help at all. He took them on purpose." "Nala, I'm afraid this is a deliberate attempt to make it look like you're a lazy person who doesn't properly maintain the house," Attorney Abernathy said with a grim expression. They turned to the following pages, which contained credit card statements. Nala saw a long list of charges for luxury handbags, expensive jewelry, and dinners at fancy restaurants, purchases she had never made. "That's not me. I didn't buy these things." "Was there an additional card in your name?" Attorney Abernathy asked. "Yes, an additional one. Tmaine managed it. He told me to use it if I needed anything, but he often took it, saying his main card had exceeded its limit. Oh my God, he set me up." Nala felt the world spinning around her. She realized that every small act of kindness from Tmaine had actually been part of his elaborate, evil plan. Then, Attorney Abernathy paused at a particularly thick document towards the end of the folder. "And this is potentially the most damaging thing, Nala." "What is it, Attorney?" "It's the testimony of an expert witness, a child psychologist." Attorney Abernathy handed the report to Nala, who read it with growing dread. The report was written in cold, clinical terms. It stated that the psychologist had conducted covert observations of Nala's interactions with Zariah. The conclusion was that Nala was emotionally unstable, neglected her daughter's needs, and was detrimental to Zariah's psychological development. The report recommended full custody for Tmaine, citing the mental health of the child as the primary concern. "This makes no sense. When was this observation conducted? I've never even met a psychologist." Nala's voice shook violently. According to this report, the observation was conducted in public places, at the park, at the mall, and when you picked up your daughter from school. Attorney Abernathy explained, looking at her intently. "That's insane. Zariah always seemed happy with me. This is defamation. Who is this psychologist?" Attorney Abernathy flipped the cover of the report. "Her name is Dr. Valencia," he said. "Here are all her credentials. She seems very professional and convincing." Attorney Abernathy looked at Nala seriously. "Nala, I've never seen her in my life. The reality of living under the same roof with the man who was meticulously planning to destroy her was a silent, living hell." Tmaine hadn't left the house. He had simply moved into the guest room. The once warm and inviting house now felt like a frozen battlefield, with emotional landmines hidden in every corner. Nala had to live alongside her enemy, see him every morning, and pretend everything was normal in front of Zariah. Tmaine executed his strategy perfectly in front of their daughter. He was the best father in the world, suddenly. He used to come home from work earlier than usual, something he hadn't done in months. He brought expensive gifts. One night, he came back with a big box, featuring a cartoon princess on the packaging. "This is your new tablet, Zariah," Tmaine exclaimed, hugging the girl. "This is much better than your old one. It has a better camera, and Daddy installed lots of games for you." Zariah's eyes lit up with excitement. "Wow, thanks, Daddy." Nala, who was folding laundry in the living room, could only swallow hard, her heart aching. She knew exactly what Tmaine was doing. He was buying their daughter's loyalty. Nala couldn't compete. She didn't have a single dollar to buy Zariah anything. "You see, Princess?" Tmaine said, looking at Nala with a sneer while turning on the new tablet. "When you live with Daddy later, you'll be able to buy a new toy every week, unlike someone who only knows how to fold clothes." Nala stopped folding the clothes. She felt a knot forming in her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to unleash her anger at Tmaine, but she couldn't, not in front of Zariah. If she lost her temper, it would only reinforce Tmaine's accusation that she was emotionally unstable. So, Nala continued folding the clothes in silence, her head bowed, allowing Tmaine's poison to fill the room. The terror continued, day after day. Tmaine systematically undermined Nala's authority as a mother. If Nala prepared dinner, Tmaine would walk into the kitchen, taste the food, and say in front of Zariah, "Honey, the soup is a little salty again. It's okay. Tomorrow we'll just order takeout." If Nala got ready to help Zariah with her homework, Tmaine would interrupt her, saying, "Let me do it. The way Mommy teaches you is too complicated. You're going to get confused." Nala felt smaller and smaller, more and more invisible in her own home. She began to doubt herself. Did she really cook badly? Was she really incapable of helping her daughter with her schoolwork? Tmaine played his role all too well, subtly making Nala seem like an inept, incompetent woman. Zariah, trapped in the middle of this manipulative game, began to show signs of confusion. It was clear she loved her mother deeply, but she also enjoyed all the attention and expensive gifts from her father. Sometimes Zariah clung to Nala as if seeking protection, but at other times she seemed uneasy, especially after Tmaine whispered something to her. One night, Nala couldn't sleep. She quietly walked to Zariah's room to make sure her daughter was okay. She opened the door slightly. Zariah was sleeping soundly. On her desk was the new tablet Tmaine had bought her, but as Nala got closer to tuck Zariah in, she noticed something odd. Zariah's small hand was clutching something hidden under the pillow. It wasn't her favorite teddy bear. Nala looked more closely, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Zariah's old tablet, the cheap one with the screen cracked in several places, the one Nala always told her not to play with for fear the shards of glass might cut her. Nala frowned. Why did Zariah still keep this broken tablet? Why hide it under her pillow when the new tablet was on her desk? Nala didn't understand. She assumed it was just a child's sentimental attachment to an old toy. Little did she know, that broken tablet held a secret that was about to change everything. She returned to her room, her mind even more troubled. The climax occurred a few days later. Nala was anxiously waiting for Zariah to return from school. She had promised Zariah she would bake her favorite chocolate cake, but an hour passed after dismissal time, and Zariah didn't arrive. Nala called the school. They informed her that Zariah had been picked up by Tmaine. Nala's heart sank. Tmaine hadn't told her anything. She called Tmaine several times, but he didn't answer. 2 hours passed. 3 hours passed. Nala was nearly frantic with worry, pacing back and forth in the living room, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that she finally heard Tmaine's car pull into the driveway. Zariah burst through the front door, laughing and carrying a large bag filled with souvenirs from an amusement park. Behind her, Tmaine walked in calmly, wearing a self-satisfied smirk. "Where have you been, honey? Why did you take Zariah without telling me?" "I was dying of worry," Nala shouted, her voice a mixture of tears and rage. "Daddy took me to Wonderland Park, Mommy. It was so much fun," Zariah exclaimed happily. Tmaine looked at Nala coldly. "So what? I'm her father. I have the right to take my own daughter. Besides, you aren't doing anything at home." "But you should have told me." "Why? So you could ruin our fun with your drama?" It was then that Nala noticed it, a woman's perfume, a soft but unfamiliar scent permeating Tmaine's shirt. It wasn't Nala's perfume, nor was it the cologne Tmaine usually wore. "Honey, Tmaine followed the direction of Nala's gaze. He knew she had detected the scent. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. He waited for Zariah to run to her room to put away her new toys. Alone, Tmaine approached Nala, his face close to hers, his voice a low hiss, full of venom. "Did you notice? Did you really think I was going to spend the rest of my life with a woman as boring as you? You are nothing compared to her." Nala took a step back, gasping for air. There was another woman. All of this, all the false accusations, were nothing more than an attempt to get rid of her so he could be with someone else. "Who is she?" Nala whispered. "None of your business. She's a successful, intelligent woman who knows how to please a man, unlike you." That night, Zariah came to Nala's room. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Nala quickly wiped away her tears. "I'm okay, princess. My head just hurts a little." Zariah looked at her mother with a gaze that Nala found hard to read. "Are you really sick, Mommy? Daddy says that since you're sick, you're often sad and angry. Daddy said that if I go live with him later, Mommy will be able to rest and get better." Nala's heart shattered. Tmaine had been poisoning her little daughter's mind, manipulating Zariah into believing that it was an act of kindness to leave her side because her mother was sick. Nala hugged Zariah tightly. "Zariah, listen to me. I am not sick. I just love you so much. I promise I won't get angry anymore." But the damage was already done. Nala saw a flicker of hesitation in her daughter's eyes. Tmaine, who had been listening to the conversation from the doorway, merely sneered in the shadows. He walked past Nala, who was still stunned, and gave a light tap on his wife's shoulder, feigning sympathy. "Enjoy your time," Tmaine mocked in a low voice, whispering in Nala's ear. "Soon she won't even want to call you Mom anymore." The mediation hearing was a cruel joke. They were seated in a small, stuffy room. The court-appointed mediator tried in vain to find some common ground. Attorney Abernathy began in a calm voice. "Tmaine, Nyala isn't asking for much. She only wants custody of Zariah, or at least shared custody. Regarding the property, we can discuss that." Before Attorney Abernathy could finish, Attorney Cromwell, impeccably dressed and exuding wealth, interrupted him sharply. "There's nothing to discuss," Attorney Cromwell said harshly, slamming the file he was holding onto the table. "Our client's position is clear. Nala is the failed party in this marriage. It has been proven that she has failed in maintaining the home and raising the child. Our client demands full custody for Zariah's future." Tmaine sat beside him with a blank, unreadable face. Here is the requested translation and rewriting of the provided text. Nyala was portrayed as if she were the perpetrator, not the victim. "I only want the best for my daughter," Tmaine stated, his voice dripping with insincerity. "And taking her away from her mother is what's best for her." Nala visibly trembled at his words. Attorney Cromwell gave a dry chuckle. "Nala, if you insist on fighting this, we will proceed to trial. And I can assure you that the evidence we possess will be deeply humiliating for you. We have the photos, the credit card statements, the expert witness testimony. You would be wise to sign this agreement. Our client is acting with incredible generosity by not pursuing a countersuit against you. Do you really want to leave this house with nothing and without Zariah? Are you insane?" Nyala cried out in anguish. The mediator attempted to step in, but Tmaine and his lawyer remained completely unyielding. The mediation ultimately failed. Attorney Abernathy patted Nyala consolingly on the shoulder as they left. "Stay strong, Nyala. The real battle is just beginning." As the first day of the trial approached, Nyala felt a pit forming in her stomach each morning. Attorney Abernathy consistently reminded her to remain calm, no matter what. The courtroom itself felt cold and forbidding, with its towering wooden walls, imposing chairs, and the judge's gavel, which seemed to symbolize absolute authority. Tmaine sat across from her, appearing smug and confident next to Attorney Cromwell. The trial commenced, with Attorney Cromwell presenting his case first. He spoke smoothly and with unwavering conviction, laying out his version of the facts. He presented the photographs of the untidy house, attempting to paint Nyala as a lazy and slovenly housewife. Then, he presented the credit card statements, accusing Nyala of being wasteful and financially irresponsible. "Your Honor," Attorney Cromwell declared theatrically, "while my client Tmaine has dedicated himself to earning a living, his wife has been at home squandering his money and neglecting both their daughter and their home." Nyala fought the urge to scream that it was all a lie, that Tmaine had orchestrated the entire situation, that he had used the credit card himself, and that he had deliberately taken the photos when she was at her sickest. All she could do was clench her hands tightly beneath the table. Attorney Abernathy stopped her with a reassuring glance. When it was Attorney Abernathy's turn to speak, he attempted to rebut the accusations. He argued that the photographs had been taken completely out of context and explained that the credit card statements reflected Tmaine's own spending habits, but his arguments seemed feeble in comparison. It was essentially Nyala's word against the tangible evidence presented by Attorney Cromwell. The judge took notes, but his expression remained unreadable, offering no clue as to his thoughts. Then came the moment that Nyala had been dreading the most. "The plaintiff calls his expert witness," Attorney Cromwell announced. "Dr. Valencia, child psychologist." The courtroom doors opened, and a woman entered. Nyala held her breath. The woman was strikingly beautiful and impeccably dressed. Her hair was pulled back neatly, she wore a professional blazer, and she walked with an air of unwavering confidence. She didn't appear evil at all, but remarkably convincing. As the woman was sworn in, Nyala caught a familiar scent, the same perfume that had lingered on Tmaine's shirt that night. Nyala's heart skipped a beat. It was her, Tmaine's mistress, posing as a child psychologist. Valencia settled into the witness box, speaking in a composed manner with clear diction, using psychological terms that sounded incredibly professional and sophisticated. "Yes, Your Honor," Valencia began, responding to Attorney Cromwell's questions. "I conducted observations of Mrs. Nyala and her daughter Zariah's natural behavior over the past 3 months. "And what were your findings, doctor?" Attorney Cromwell asked. Valencia opened her notes. "My findings were deeply concerning. I observed a pattern of inconsistent and emotionally volatile behavior in Mrs. Nyala. There are indications of significant emotional distress." Valencia then began to dissect the lies, one by one, twisting facts into deadly weapons. First observation. At a shopping mall, Mrs. Nyala pulled Zariah roughly, speaking to her in a loud voice, which caused Zariah to cry in fear in front of other people. This demonstrates a limited capacity for emotional regulation. Nala closed her eyes, recalling that day. Zariah had almost run towards the descending escalator, and Nala had instinctively shouted and pulled Zariah back to prevent her from being seriously injured. "Zariah, be careful," she had yelled. She wasn't angry, but terrified that Zariah would have been hurt. But Valencia had reinterpreted it as verbal abuse. Second observation. In a park, Valencia continued, Mrs. Nyala appeared to be engrossed in her phone, seemingly ignoring Zariah, who was playing alone. When Zariah fell, Mrs. Nyala didn't notice immediately. When she did, her reaction was exaggerated and veered towards hysteria, which further traumatized Zariah. Another lie. Nala remembered that she was simply texting about the grocery list that Tmaine had requested. Zariah had tripped, and Neela had been genuinely frightened. She had immediately rushed over, hugging and comforting Zariah. Her reaction was that of a concerned mother, not a hysterical one. "My conclusion," Valencia stated, looking directly at the judge with a steady gaze, "is that Mrs. Nyala lacks the stable emotional capacity to properly raise a 7-year-old girl. There are strong indications of parentification syndrome, where Mrs. Nyala unconsciously projects her own unhappiness and emotional problems onto her child. For Zariah's overall well-being, I strongly recommend full custody be granted to the father, Mr. Tmaine, who is the more stable parent." The courtroom fell silent. Valencia's testimony had been incredibly persuasive, impressively scientific, and utterly devastating. Nyala wept silently. "It's a lie," she whispered to Attorney Abernathy. "It's all a fabrication. She is Tmaine's mistress. It's her." "Stay calm, Nyala." Attorney Abernathy responded tensely. "Don't react. That is exactly what they want you to do." Attorney Abernathy stood to cross-examine Valencia. He tried his best. "Doctor, Valencia, are you certain you can make such a serious diagnosis based solely on distant observations?" Valencia offered a subtle smile. "On the contrary, counselor, observations of natural behavior without the subject's awareness are the most reliable. There is no opportunity for manipulation. It is pure, authentic behavior. You were paid by Mr. Tmaine for this testimony, were you not?" "I was compensated for my professional services, counselor, not for my conclusions. My conclusions are objective and grounded in data obtained from the field," Valencia retorted cleverly. Attorney Abernathy had reached a dead end. Valencia had deflected his questions skillfully, covering all potential weaknesses in her argument. The trial adjourned for the day. Nyala left the courtroom, her legs trembling. She felt utterly defeated. She noticed Tmaine smirking slightly, nodding to Valencia with a look of obvious satisfaction. In the lobby, Nala leaned against the wall and sobbed. "We've lost, attorney. We've lost. They have all the advantages." Attorney Abernathy paused for a moment. Then he stared intently at Tmaine and Valencia, who were walking together in the distance, discreetly separated but not entirely distant. "Not yet, Neela," Attorney Abernathy said quietly. His eyes narrowed. "I know something isn't right. The way she looks at him when she thinks no one is watching is not how a professional psychologist looks at a client." Attorney Abernathy turned back to Nyala. "We need to uncover her true identity." A few days before the next hearing, Attorney Abernathy summoned Nyala to his office. He appeared exhausted, and the stack of papers on his desk seemed even larger than before. "Nyala, I have attempted to investigate this woman's background," Attorney Abernathy said bluntly. "The results are not what we expected." Nala's heart began to race. "What do you mean, attorney? Her credentials are clean too clean." Attorney Abernathy sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "She is registered with the Psychological Association and has a licensed practice. All the documentation is flawless. Either she is a real psychologist whom Tmaine hired to lie for him, or Tmaine has meticulously fabricated this entire identity. The truth is that we cannot attack her by accusing her of being a fake psychologist. The court would dismiss our claim immediately. The glimmer of hope that Nala had been clinging to vanished instantly. So, we can't prove she's lying. No, we simply can't prove that she times isn't times a psychologist. The only remaining course of action is to challenge her testimony directly. And that means you will have to testify, Nala. Attorney Abernathy looked at Nyala intently. Honestly, you must tell your side of the story about the photographs, the credit cards, Tmaine's behavior, and, most importantly, you cannot allow yourself to become emotionally distraught. Attorney Cromwell will undoubtedly try to provoke you. He will want you to appear hysterical in front of the judge, just as Valencia described. Nyala nodded silently. I will do it, attorney. I will try. The day arrived. It was Nyala's turn to take the witness stand. After being sworn in, Attorney Abernathy began with gentle questions, carefully guiding Nyala to recount her life as a housewife. Nyala spoke in a voice that she struggled to keep calm. She explained how she had left her job to dedicate herself to caring for Zariah and described her daily routine from dawn until late at night. About the photos of the messy house, Nyala, can you explain the circumstances? Attorney Abernathy asked. Yes, attorney. Those photos were taken by Tmaine approximately 2 months ago. I was severely ill with a high fever for 3 days. During that time, I could barely get out of bed. I asked Tmaine to help with the household chores, but he said he was too busy with work. As a result, the house became very messy. I simply didn't have the strength to clean, Nala explained. And regarding the credit card statements, it was an additional card in my name, but Tmaine used it more often. He claimed that his primary card frequently reached its limit due to business expenses. I believed him. I never purchased those expensive bags or jewelry. I was unaware of those charges until I saw them included in the lawsuit documents. Nyala conveyed everything honestly. She noticed some people in the gallery whispering, and some looked at her with sympathy. However, the judge remained silent, his expression giving nothing away. Then came Attorney Cromwell's turn. The cunning lawyer stood up, straightened his tie, and approached the witness stand with a smirk. Nyala, he began in a sickly sweet tone, are you implying that your husband, Mr. Tmaine, who diligently works to provide for your family, deliberately set you up? Is that what you're saying? Nella stammered. I didn't say that. I am simply explaining what happened, but that is precisely what it sounds like. The husband takes photos of the messy house. The husband misuses the credit card. Everything is the husband's fault. It appears that you are not to blame for anything. Are you suggesting that you are perfect? Of course not. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a failure. Not a failure. Attorney Cromwell scoffed disdainfully. Nyala, you mentioned that you were ill when those photos were taken. Do you have any medical records to prove that you were gravely ill for 3 days? Nala fell silent. I didn't go to the hospital. I simply took medicine from the pharmacy. I thought I would recover on my own. So, there is no proof. Attorney Cromwell pounced. It's just your word against actual photographic evidence. How interesting. Attorney Cromwell moved on to the topic of the credit cards. You claim that your husband used them, but the card was in your name. Did you ever notify the bank that the card was being misused? No. Did you ever confront your husband about these charges? No. You said nothing. Doesn't this prove that you were negligent and financially irresponsible? Or does it mean that you approved of all the purchases? I trusted him. He was my husband. Nyala's voice rose. Blind trust. Attorney Cromwell snapped. A trust that ruined your family's finances, and now you are blaming your husband. I am not blaming him. Enough. Attorney Cromwell raised his hand, walked back to his table, and picked up a large printed photograph. He held it up for the judge and everyone in the courtroom to see. Your Honor, I request permission to present Exhibit P-12. Nyala's eyes widened in horror. It was a photograph of her, taken in her bedroom a few weeks before the divorce papers had been filed, her hair disheveled, crying and screaming. Mrs. Nyla, can you explain this photograph? Attorney Cromwell asked triumphantly. Nala trembled violently. Tears began to well up in her eyes once more. Isn't this clear evidence of what Dr. Valencia described? Volatile emotions, hysteria. Is this the face of a competent mother? You don't understand. Nala wailed, her tears now streaming down her face. That night Tmaine had just come home. He called me a useless wife. He said that I was a burden. He insulted me. He said that I didn't deserve to be Zariah's mother. He provoked me. So, you admit it. Attorney Cromwell pressed relentlessly, giving her no room to breathe. You admit that you were screaming hysterically? You admit that you lost control? You are emotionally volatile, just as Dr. Valencia testified. Correct. No, Nala shouted, rising from her chair. He set me up. He secretly took that photo of me after hurting me. He is a devil. Enough. The judge struck the gavel forcefully. Witness, calm yourself and sit down. Nyala sobbed, her shoulders shaking. She slumped back into her chair, defeated, utterly defeated. She had behaved exactly as Tmaine and Attorney Cromwell had intended. She appeared hysterical, unstable, the very image of the incompetent mother that they had fabricated. She glanced towards Tmaine's side of the room. The man had his head bowed, feigning a grimace of sadness, as if he were hurt by his wife's instability. Attorney Cromwell smiled smugly. The judge slowly shook his head, his expression leaving no doubt as to his opinion. That day's trial ended in complete disaster for Nyala. Attorney Abernathy attempted to comfort her as they left, but Nyala felt numb. It's over, attorney, she whispered weakly. That night was the longest of her life. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following day, and Nyala knew that she was going to lose Zariah. She went into Zariah's room. Her daughter was already asleep. Tmaine was not home, likely celebrating his anticipated victory with Valencia. Nala sat at the foot of the bed, stroking her daughter's hair. Her tears fell silently onto Zariah's cheek, and the girl stirred slightly. Mommy. Zariah opened her eyes, half asleep. Shh, go back to sleep, princess, Nala whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She hugged her daughter tightly, perhaps the last hug as a full-time mother. I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, Mommy loves you very much, always. Sensing her mother's sadness, Zariah hugged her back tightly. I love you too, Mommy. Nala slowly broke the embrace. It was then that she noticed it again, the corner of the old, cracked tablet sticking out from under Zariah's pillow. Zariah was clutching it tightly, even in her sleep. Nyala couldn't understand why Zariah was so attached to that broken object, but that night, she was too devastated to contemplate it further. She simply kissed her daughter on the forehead and left to face the end of her world. The courtroom felt colder than usual. The morning air was heavy and stifling. Nyala sat stiffly in her chair, her eyes puffy and vacant, having not slept all night. Beside her, Attorney Abernathy stared ahead with a somber expression. He knew that he had done everything possible, but, like Nyala, they were facing an insurmountable challenge. The atmosphere on the opposite side of the room was markedly different. Tmaine looked refreshed and confident in a new suit, occasionally smiling and exchanging quiet jokes with Attorney Cromwell. Victory was within his grasp. In the gallery, Nala saw Valencia. The woman was seated elegantly, dressed in a cream-colored dress, looking at Nala with a barely perceptible smile, the smile of a victor. The judge entered, and the room fell silent instantly. Nala's heart pounded so hard that it hurt. In the matter of the divorce petition, registry number, the judge began formally. Today's subject is the reading of the verdict. However, before that, I request that both parties present their closing arguments. Attorney Cromwell stood up first, summarizing his supposed triumph skillfully. Your Honor, he said loudly, during this trial, we have presented irrefutable evidence, the photographic proof demonstrating Mrs. Nyala's neglect of her household responsibilities, the financial proof demonstrating her irresponsibility, and, most importantly, the testimony of the esteemed child psychologist, Dr. Valencia, who objectively and scientifically presented the defendant's emotional instability. Attorney Cromwell pointed at Nala. We even witnessed Mrs. Nyala's hysterical behavior in this very courtroom during the last trial, which further supports Dr. Valencia's diagnosis and is clearly documented. He turned towards Tmaine. On the other hand, we have Mr. Tmaine, a capable and financially successful father who is, above all, emotionally stable and genuinely concerned for his daughter's future. Your Honor, the choice here is clear. This is not about punishing the wife, but about saving the child. In Zariah's best interest, I implore you to grant full custody to our client, Mr. Tmaine, and approve his request for the division of assets. Attorney Cromwell sat down with a self-satisfied grin. Now, it was Attorney Abernathy's turn. He rose slowly, looked around the room without making eye contact with the judge. Your Honor, Attorney Abernathy began in a soft but firm voice, what we have witnessed here is not proof, but character assassination, a very well-planned defamation campaign. Photos can be deceiving. One could take a photo of the best chef's kitchen in the world at the wrong moment and make it appear filthy. Financial statements can be manipulated, particularly when one party has complete financial control and the trust of the other. And expert testimony. The testimony of an expert who merely observed from a distance and drew sweeping conclusions from a few isolated incidents taken out of context is being given more weight than the deep maternal love a mother has, nurtured over 7 years. Attorney Abernathy looked directly at Tmaine. Your Honor, we are not rescuing a girl. We are witnessing a greedy husband attempting to discard his wife, steal her assets, and cruelly take away the most precious thing in her life, her daughter. Nala is a good mother. His voice trembled slightly with emotion. She is not perfect, no mother is, but she has dedicated her life to Zariah. Please, do not allow this elaborate and deceitful campaign to destroy that bond. I beg you to judge with conscience. Attorney Abernathy sat down. The room was silent. His argument had been powerful and emotionally charged, but Niala knew that it wasn't enough. Attorney Abernathy's argument was based on belief, while Attorney Cromwell's argument was based on physical evidence and expert testimony. In the eyes of the law, the outcome was all but certain. The judge cleared his throat, put on his glasses, and opened the thick file in front of him. This was the moment of truth. Having reviewed all documents from both parties, heard all testimonies, and considered all evidence presented, the judge began in an expressionless tone. Her heart sank. The court notes that the plaintiff, Mr. Tmaine, has successfully presented significant evidence. The judge continued. Nala lowered her head and closed her eyes. First, the visual evidence, that is, the photographs demonstrated the negligence of the defendant, Mrs. Niela, in household management. Second, the financial evidence demonstrated a considerable spending imbalance on the credit card in the defendant's name. Each sentence was a knife twisting in her heart. And most damaging, the judge said, his voice sounding definitive, is the testimony of the expert witness, Dr. Valencia, regarding Mrs. Niala's emotional state. This testimony was unfortunately reinforced by the defendant's own conduct during the previous trial, providing the court with a deeply troubling portrayal of the psychological environment in which the child is being raised. Nala began to weep silently. It was over. Tmaine looked at Nala, and a cruel smile of victory formed at the corner of his mouth. Valencia, behind him, sat up straighter in her seat, ready to applaud. With all considerations mentioned above, and especially in the best interest and for the mental health of the minor, Zariah. The judge raised his gavel, and Niala closed her eyes, bracing herself to hear the sentence that would shatter her life. The court rules. Stop. The voice was small, but it cut through the silence of the courtroom, sharp and clear. Every head turned simultaneously towards the source of the sound. In the slightly open doorway at the back of the room stood Zariah. She was alone, still wearing her school uniform, having clearly snuck in. Tmaine's face transformed from arrogance to shock and utter panic. "Zariah, what are you doing here? Get out of here," he shouted in a frenzy. "Guard! Zariah! Sit down, princess." Tmaine tried again, his voice now laced with tension, but Zariah didn't move. She walked into the courtroom, the sound of her small footsteps echoing on the marble floor. She didn't look at her mother, who was speechless, her mouth agape. She didn't look at her father, who was furious. She looked directly at the judge. The room, which had been silently awaiting the final verdict, was now frozen in stunned silence. The gavel, poised to fall, remained suspended in midair. The judge's eyes widened as he stared at the little girl standing in the doorway. Nala turned around, feeling her heart plummet. "Zariah," she whispered in disbelief. What was her daughter doing here? Who had brought her? Tmaine reacted swiftly. His face, which moments before had been brimming with arrogance and triumph, was now pale and ashen. Pure terror filled his eyes. "Zariah," he yelled, his voice rising without any attempt to maintain his composure. "What are you doing here? Get out of here! This isn't a playground. Guard, how could a child have gotten in here?" Zariah flinched at her father's outburst, but she didn't back down. Instead, she walked further into the room. "Zariah," Daddy said, "turn around and sit down." Tmaine shouted again, now half standing. His lawyer, Attorney Cromwell, was equally bewildered. He stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this is an egregious violation of procedure. This trial is confidential. A minor should not be present and must not interrupt the proceedings. I demand that you order your staff to remove the child immediately." Nala was still frozen in place, completely bewildered. Part of her mind was reeling from the fact that Zariah was in this horrible place, while the other part was trembling with fear. What was Zariah going to say? Had Tmaine succeeded in completely poisoning her mind? Would Zariah tell the judge that she preferred her father? The thought made Nala's stomach churn. "Your Honor, with all due respect." Attorney Abernathy's voice rang out suddenly, cutting off Attorney Cromwell. "This child has come here with a clear purpose. This concerns her future directly. We cannot ignore her." The judge raised his hand, his face grave. "Silence, everyone." His voice reverberated through the room. He glared at Tmaine and Attorney Cromwell, silencing their protests. Then his gaze softened as he turned to Zariah. Zariah approached slowly, her small steps echoing loudly on the silent marble floor. She stopped in the center of the room, between the tables of the two lawyers. She looked directly at the judge, who was seated on his elevated throne. "Your Honor," Zariah said, her voice trembling slightly but clear enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry to interrupt." "It's all right, Princess," the judge said, his tone now gentler. "Why are you here? Who brought you?" "I came alone. My aunt brought me, but I snuck in. I heard my daddy saying my mommy is bad." The judge thundered. "Let the child speak." Neela covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Zariah swallowed, as if gathering her courage. She looked at the judge again, her pure, clear eyes filled with sincerity. "Daddy said my mommy is bad. Daddy said my mommy gets very angry. Daddy said my mommy can't take care of me," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. Nala closed her eyes. This was it. Zariah was going to repeat all of Tmaine's lies, but a sentence made Nala open her eyes in shock. "But can I show you something?" Zariah looked at the judge with pleading eyes. "Something my mommy doesn't know." Those words hung in the air. Asterisk, something my mommy doesn't know. Asterisk. Nala frowned, puzzled. What did she mean? Attorney Cromwell leaped to his feet once more. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A child's ramblings cannot be used as evidence. This, recording someone without their consent, is a gross invasion of privacy." "That recording will prove your expert witness is a liar," Attorney Abernathy shot back at Attorney Cromwell. "This is getting interesting." "Enough." The judge slammed his gavel down, his previously kind eyes now blazing with intensity. He sensed a major deception was at play. "Clerk, assist the child. Connect that device to the court monitors immediately." "No," Tmaine yelled, desperation in his voice. He gripped the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "I object, Your Honor. This is a setup." "Your objection is noted, Mr. Tmaine. Now, please be seated." He found a cable, and moments later, the large monitor screens on the courtroom wall went black before displaying Zariah's tablet home screen. Tmaine covered his face in shame. Behind him, Valencia seemed to be trembling uncontrollably. Zariah, now standing next to the clerk, focused on the screen. She didn't look at Nala or Tmaine. She was laser-focused on her mission. "This one," she said, pointing to a video file in the gallery. The clerk clicked it, and a video thumbnail appeared. "Go ahead, Princess." the judge encouraged. "Play the video." Zariah reached out a small index finger and pressed the play button on the screen. The large monitor flickered, then the video started. The shot was slightly shaky and tilted, as if recorded from a low angle, hidden behind something. A quiet laugh could be heard. "It's our living room," Nyala whispered, recognizing the sofa and the large plant pot in the corner. The video appeared to have been taken from behind that pot, a place where Zariah often hid while playing hide-and-seek. Then, two figures entered the frame, Tmaine and Valencia. But this wasn't the Valencia in a professional blazer from court. This was Valencia in fine, comfortable loungewear, her hair down. Tmaine entered, laughing, and immediately hugged Valencia from behind, kissing her neck. "Oh my God." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Nyala froze, her breath caught in her throat. So, the perfume, her suspicions, everything was true. The woman who had given false testimony to ruin her was the same one sleeping with her husband in her own house. On the other side of the room, Attorney Cromwell stared at the monitor, his mouth agape. He turned to Tmaine with a look of horror, as if to say, "You never told me about this." In the gallery, Valencia lowered her head, trying to hide her face from the horrified eyes of everyone in the room. Then, the voices of the figures in the video were heard clearly in the silent courtroom. It was Valencia's voice. "Are you sure your plan will work? Your wife is so stupid." Taine's voice, filled with arrogant certainty, replied, "Stupid and submissive. She won't suspect a thing. All the money has already been transferred to your account, baby." "Are you sure?" Nyala felt her legs give way beneath her. Her money, their joint account, had been transferred to Valencia's account. "Oh, God," she whispered. Attorney Abernathy murmured beside her, his eyes glued to the screen. The video continued. Tmaine sat on the sofa and pulled Valencia onto his lap. "Once the verdict comes out tomorrow, I will officially get custody of Zariah," Tmaine's voice said. "We'll sell this house from hell immediately and move to Switzerland, far away from her." Valencia's voice, filled with concern, replied, "And Zariah seems very attached to her mother." This was the part that hurt Nyala the most. She held her breath, waiting for Tmaine's answer. Tmaine's voice, laced with disdain, said, "Oh, the kid is easy to handle. Just give her a new tablet, and she'll forget her mother. You will be her new mother, a smarter, more successful, and much sexier mother." Tmaine then kissed Valencia passionately in the video. "Enough! Turn it off!" Tmaine screamed in rage. He jumped from his chair, trying to rush toward the clerk's table to stop the video. "Officers, restrain him!" the judge shouted, his voice filled with anger. The two security guards guarding the door moved immediately, overpowering Tmaine before he could advance, bending his arms behind his back. Tmaine twisted like an animal caught in a trap. "Let me go! It's not true! It's manipulated!" Tmaine screamed desperately. "Silence him," ordered the judge. "Continue the video. I want to see it to the end." The video continued playing, oblivious to the chaos in the room. Now it was Valencia's turn to speak. "I'm still a little worried. What about my testimony as a psychologist? What if Nala's lawyer refutes it with his observations?" Taine's voice laughed again. "I already prepared. I recorded her last week when she cried hysterically. Remember, I will provoke her again at the trial. I will insult her until she explodes. She will scream and cry in front of the judge." Nyala sobbed. She remembered her testimony, the photo, her screams. He had set her up. "Once she gets hysterical, your testimony will seem perfect," Tmaine's voice continued. "The judge will see for himself that she is an unstable, crazy woman. No one will believe her. They will believe Dr. Valencia, the professional." The video finally showed Tmaine and Valencia toasting with wine glasses, laughing. The video ended, and the screen went black. The room remained silent for a few seconds. The only sounds were Nyala's sobbing and Tmaine's heavy breathing as he was restrained by the guards. Everyone in the room, the judge, the clerks, the gallery, even Attorney Cromwell, stared at the black screen in horror. They had just witnessed a meticulously planned and executed evil conspiracy, fraud, perjury, money laundering, and manipulation of the court. In the gallery, some people began to turn their heads, searching for Valencia. "There she is! It's the woman!" someone shouted. Valencia realized she was completely exposed. Panicked, she jumped from her seat and ran towards the back exit. Zariah, the little heroine who had been watching the video that had just played, turned her head. She didn't look at Tmaine, who was subdued. She looked at her mother. Her pure eyes met Niala's, which were filled with tears. The judge, his face red with rage, raised his gavel high. He didn't drop it silently. He banged it hard on the desk. Silence, everyone. The court resumes. Officers, close all exits. No one leaves. Arrest that woman, doctor. Valencia, immediately. The room erupted into controlled chaos. The bang of the furious judge's gavel was both an order and a release of the tension that had frozen everyone. The two security guards who had just subdued Tmaine now dragged him to a chair. Tmaine wasn't screaming anymore. He was simply gasping for air. His eyes were frantic, and his expensive suit was soaked in sweat. He knew it was over. At the back door, another commotion occurred. Valencia, in a panic, couldn't open the large door the judge had just ordered closed. She pulled the handle and pushed in vain. A female officer intercepted her quickly, and Valencia collapsed on the floor. Her professional mask had completely fallen. She was no longer the calm and convincing psychologist. She was just a scared woman crying hysterically, exactly the image she had used in the photos to frame Nala. Karma had arrived swiftly and mercilessly. "Bring her here," ordered the judge in a cold and unforgiving voice. The officers dragged the sobbing Valencia to the front and sat her in the witness stand, which now felt like the defendant's bench. Across the room, Taine's lawyer, Attorney Cromwell, looked like a melting wax doll. His face was pale, and his tie was crooked. He no longer looked at the judge. He stared at the stack of papers piled in front of him, speechless. His career and reputation had been destroyed in an instant by a video from a child's broken tablet. He knew he was implicated. He might not have known about the affair, but he knew about the manipulated photo evidence and the testimony prepared to frame Niala. Niala herself was still sitting, watching the scene unfold before her eyes as if it were a movie. Her sobs had calmed down, replaced by a frozen shock. Beside her, Attorney Abernathy gave her a gentle pat on the back, but his eyes remained fixed on the judge, ready for the final blow. Zariah stood silently next to the clerk, a center of calm in the storm. She only watched her mother, as if making sure she was okay. The judge took a deep breath and smoothed his robe. He looked at Tmaine, then Valencia, and finally Attorney Cromwell. "Mr. Tmaine," the judge began in a quiet but terrifying voice, "that video is the property of your daughter and was recorded in your own home. Do you still want to insist that it is manipulated?" Tmaine raised his head, his face empty. She set me up," he muttered. "It was a last, pathetic attempt. That woman, Valencia, planned everything. She seduced me." Hearing this, Valencia screamed immediately. "Liar! You told me to do it. You told me you would marry me. You told me you would transfer all the money to my account. I did all this for you." Silence. The judge banged his gavel again. "Both of you are equally culpable. Your confessions have already been recorded in the court record." The judge turned to Valencia. "Miss Valencia, you sat on this stand under oath and gave false testimony. You used your professional credentials to destroy a mother's life and aid in a crime. You not only violated your code of ethics, but you committed perjury before this court." The judge looked at Attorney Cromwell. "Attorney Cromwell, did you know or should you have suspected that the evidence you presented, including this testimony, was false? You tried to provoke the witness in the last trial to fit your client's false narrative. You have disgraced this profession. I will have the Ethics Committee revoke your law license." Attorney Cromwell bowed his head, unable to utter a word. Finally, the judge looked at Tmaine, his gaze so piercing it seemed to flay the man alive. "Mr. Tmaine, you entered this courtroom demanding justice. You accused your wife of failure, accused her of instability, demanded her assets, and, most heinous of all, demanded to separate a child from her mother." The judge lifted Tmaine's lawsuit file and held it up. "Let's review your lawsuit. First, the accusation that the wife failed and neglected the home, proven false. The video just demonstrated that you conspired to defame her." The judge threw a sheet from the file to the floor. Second, the accusation that the wife was financially irresponsible and wasteful, proven false. The video is a confession that you stole money from your joint account and transferred it to your mistress's account. This isn't just defamation. It is theft. He threw the second sheet. Third, the accusation that the wife was emotionally unstable, backed by false expert testimony, proven as a blatant scheme. The video proves you conspired to provoke your wife, record her in secret, and use it to deceive this court. He threw the third sheet. Your entire lawsuit, the judge's voice rose, is a pile of garbage based on lies, greed, and adultery. The court dismisses entirely the divorce petition presented by Mr. Tmaine. The gavel struck hard, but the judge wasn't finished. He looked at Attorney Abernathy and Nala. The court will not stop here. Based on this new, irrefutable evidence, the court rules to protect the victim. 1. The judge raised a finger. Full custody of the minor Zariah is granted unconditionally to her biological mother, Mrs. Nyala. Nyala gasped. The tears now flowing were of relief. She looked at Zariah. 2. Continued the judge. Mr. Tmaine's divorce suit has been dismissed. However, the court suggests that Mrs. Nyala file a countersuit right now. Mrs. Nyala, do you wish to divorce your husband? Attorney Abernathy whispered in her ear. Nyala, with a trembling but firm voice, looked directly at Tmaine, who was now defeated with his head bowed. Yes, Your Honor, I demand a divorce right now. Good, exclaimed the judge. The court grants the divorce to Mrs. Nyala on the grounds of adultery and fraud by the husband. Full custody to Mrs. Nyala. 3. The judge stood up. Now, all assets in the name of Mr. Tmaine and Miss Valencia will be frozen immediately. The court orders a full investigation to trace all funds stolen from Mrs. Nyala. The house currently occupied is declared total property of Mrs. Nyala and Zariah. And 4. The judge's voice now resonated throughout the room. Based on the video evidence and the confessions in this room, I order the immediate arrest of Mr. Tmaine and Miss Valencia for multiple criminal offenses, including conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, domestic theft, and tampering with evidence in a court of law. Take them away. The security guards immediately handcuffed Tmaine. The man who had entered that morning with such arrogance was now being led out with his head bowed. He walked past Nyala, but didn't dare look his wife in the eye. Valencia was also handcuffed, her screams having subsided, leaving only a puffy and messy face. She was dragged away, her career and her freedom gone. Nyala was still sitting, trembling. Attorney Abernathy smiled from ear to ear. We won, Nala. We won. Nyala couldn't speak. She simply stood up and walked slowly toward the center of the room. Zariah ran toward her. Nala knelt and hugged her daughter tightly, as if embracing her savior. She cried on her small shoulders, not tears of sadness, but tears of a mother saved by her little heroine. The aftermath of Judgment Day spread like wildfire. The story of the broken tablet made headlines everywhere. The story of the greedy husband, the fake psychologist, and the 7-year-old heroine dominated local news for weeks. The first few weeks were a blur for Nyala and Zariah. Attorney Abernathy took care of everything. By order of the judge, all of Tmaine and Valencia's assets were frozen. The investigation proved that Tmaine had transferred nearly $1 million to Valencia's account over the last year. All the money was seized and returned to Nyala's new account. The big, cold house was now officially Nyala's, but she couldn't stay there anymore. There were too many bad memories, too many shadows of Tmaine and Valencia in every corner. With Attorney Abernathy's consent, Nyala sold the house. The proceeds from the sale were more than enough to start a new life. The punishment for the villains was swift and severe. Given the overwhelming evidence, Tmaine was sentenced to 12 years in prison for fraud, theft, and perjury. Valencia, whose psychologist credentials turned out to be real but criminally used, was sentenced to 8 years, and her license to practice was permanently revoked. The cunning attorney Cromwell was immediately disbarred by the Ethics Committee and faced criminal charges for his participation in the conspiracy. Karma had been paid in full. 3 months after that Judgment Day, The laughter of children could be heard in a small, green park. Nala, with the weight of worry lifted from her face, smiled as she watched Zariah on the swing. They had moved, not to a big house, but to a modest and cozy 3-bedroom apartment. It was full of photos of the two of them and smelled of cookies Nala had baked. Nala had started a small catering business from home. Her culinary skills, which Tmaine had always belittled, were now praised by many. Orders were coming in. She was busy and tired, but happy. She was independent. "Mommy, look!" Zariah ran toward Nala, who was sitting on a park bench, her hands dirty with soil. "The flowers are going to bloom soon." Nala smiled, stroking Zariah's short hair. "Wow, my daughter's very good at planting things." They sat side by side for a while, enjoying the afternoon sun. There was a question Nala hadn't had the chance to ask calmly. "Princess," Nala began softly, "can I ask you something?" "What, Mommy?" Zariah looked at her with clear eyes. "The video on the old tablet. Why? Why did you record it?" Zariah was silent for a moment, as if remembering. "Because I didn't like Auntie Valencia." "Why didn't you like her?" "Auntie Valencia pretended to be nice, smiled at Mommy, and talked to you at the mall. But when Mommy went to the bathroom, she told Daddy, 'Your wife takes too long.' And in the park, too. She saw me, but she told Daddy that Mommy wasn't watching me. But Mommy times was times watching me." Nala was amazed. Her little daughter was such a sharp observer. "And that night," continued Zariah, "Daddy said he was working late, but I heard his car come back. I wanted to show Daddy my new drawing, but when I went down, I saw Daddy come in with Auntie Valencia. Daddy hugged her right away. I got scared, so I hid behind the flower pot. So, I recorded there. Yes, I used the old tablet to record. I remembered Mommy said that if there are bad people, there must be proof. And I had the old tablet with me." Nala's heart warmed. She had forgotten she had said that. "But Princess," Nala asked again, "this is the most important question. Why didn't you tell Mommy? Why did you keep it a secret?" Zariah interrupted herself in a low voice. "Daddy said Mommy shouldn't know." Nala frowned. "Daddy told you that?" "Yes. In the video, Daddy told Auntie Valencia, 'My wife is stupid. She won't know.' Zariah thought it was a big secret because Daddy said Mommy shouldn't know. So I kept it. I didn't want Daddy to get mad if Mommy found out. It was the pure logic of a child. She had inadvertently aggravated her father's crime, but she had kept it secret because her own father had told her mother shouldn't know." "So, why did you show it in court?" "Because the judge was going to take Zariah away from Mommy. Daddy said Mommy was bad, and Auntie Valencia also said Mommy was bad, and that's not true." Zariah had tears in her eyes. "I don't want to be separated from Mommy. Mommy isn't bad. Mommy is the best mom. So I had to show the judge that Daddy and Auntie Valencia are the bad ones." Nala couldn't hold back anymore. She hugged Zariah tightly, crying tears of joy. For all this time, she had suffered Taine's accusations that she was a failed mother. She had doubted herself, felt destroyed. But before her was the strongest proof that she hadn't failed. She had raised an incredible daughter, a pure, sharp girl who could distinguish truth from falsehood, a brave girl with the courage to act alone to protect her mother, a girl with a pure sense of justice. "Thank you, Princess," whispered Nala into her daughter's hair. "Thank you for saving me." Zariah hugged her. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, Zariah." Nala broke the hug and looked at her daughter's bright face. Finally, she understood. She had never failed. She had just been raising a heroine, and now both were free for a new beginning. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.